Hi everyone, welcome back. This is the heart chakra video, and we are looking at the fourth chakra now. So when we think about the physical location of chakras, we have an understanding that they run along the center of the spinal column. So they really occupy this point at which the two halves sort of meet in the middle. So if we're looking at it through a vision of the masculine on the right side and the feminine on the left side, the center space is where these two energies meld, and we find that that center point is where the expression of the chakra actually manifests. So there's a misunderstanding when it comes to the heart chakra. Many people in the beginning of learning about chakras and just thinking of organs and all of the anatomical placements, there's often a misunderstanding about the heart chakra being where the heart is, but it's actually a bit to the side of the heart, so running along right next to the actual organ of your heart. But it definitely takes a bit more focus into the center of your being and less about the anatomical heart placement. So I hope that makes sense. It does also give an interesting thought and a question to sit with, because of course there are no true answers or things that I would feel comfortable saying this is the truth. But as I develop my own awareness intuitively and just sort of feeling into what resonates, I found this concept of the anatomical heart actually being a bit overlapped. So we've got almost like this wing kind of energy around the heart. So if this is the anatomical heart that we're taught in, medical scriptures, then looking at how energetically it actually has almost this twin-like element where there's a equal and opposite encasing of the organ, which when I postulate that energy over the heart center, I start to understand that perhaps that's actually just another expression or read on the heart chakra itself. So the heart does actually encompass a much wider range of energy than what we're taught on a medical level. I hope that makes sense. So just because this crystal occupies this physical matter space that we see right here, imagine that there's also a duplicate sitting right next to it. We just can't see it with our physical eyes, but we may be able to sort of sense the in a sense parallel portion that is connected. So that's sort of what I'm describing, is the energy around the actual organ of the heart being much bigger. And I just love the way that this gives you a visual of the heart actually almost being more like wings. And sometimes when we look at different traditional art forms, I've seen this a lot in like tarot and even in tattoo artistry, this rendition of the organ of the heart having this kind of valve system that almost is like a vase that encompasses the organ of the heart. And I suspect that interpretation is actually overlapping a bit with what I was describing before, which is that the energy of the heart is actually so vastly bigger than the physical piece of the organ that we see when we dissect a human body. So the energy around the heart is much more palpable and felt, and it's meant to be recognized as the important center of your vessel in this lifetime and in all of your other lifetimes, because no matter if you are a animal or a human, you have a heart. And so this is kind of a piece that you could recognize as a connection link to each other, to memories, to other incarnations. And so it's in a sense a type of portal for information. It's like a record keeper, and it also sustains life for you in this vessel. So it's pumping, it's creating movement, it's circulating energy, it's flowing things through you, so your entire body becomes one symbiotic element that creates a a piece of you that we could recognize as the healer. So the fourth chakra, your heart chakra, as it megaphones out in its chakra projection, it creates the fourth layer around your aura. Well, what is the fourth layer? The fourth layer is the astral body. So the astral body is the part of you that leaves and goes and heals things and kind of comes back and connects. So it's always connected to you. It's never really gone. But it does sort of express itself by pulling almost like a layer of you out of the body and floats off. And this often happens very distinctly when we sleep. But it also happens during the day when you're just going about your business, and perhaps there's a subconscious awareness that there's a need for your healing energy to be elsewhere, and so you will send your astral body to that need. So if you have a friend that lives, you know, across the pond, or on the other side of the world, or maybe just a few doors down, but somebody is needing something and there's a part of you, as in your antennas, are picking up on this need, there will be a tiny piece of you that will respond to that, and it'll decide whether the astral body is appropriate to actually send over there to help entertain that healing. And so I like to think of the heart chakra as not only the seat of your soul, but also the place in which your body manifests the archetypal healer that I believe we all have access to. So when we think about how everything that's ever happened in life, whether it's something that you feel personally connected to or not, just as far as the entire record keeping of life itself, that information is stored in a data bank that we call the AKASHIC records, which is really just a very fancy term for this library, which is really an energetic space that holds on to all that is. It holds on to everything across every single timeline. So this is both in our history that we perceive from this moment, and also in our future that we perceive from this moment, because there is no time on the realm of the AKASHIC records. The time expression is no longer necessary in that dimension, and so there isn't a expression need for time to exist, so it's very much out of time. But this is where we go when we want to create that change in our current reality. When we want to affect our current timeline, we visit that AKASHIC record space and find where we can bring ourselves into more of a present time with a bit more of the desire that we wish to have. So when we think about how people go through different lifetimes repeating patterns and having genetic adoptions, in the sense of perhaps you've incarnated into a bloodline that has taken on a series of karmic debts or things that are out of balance, out of alignment, that need healing, this is the space where you're going to find a multitude of those experiences and agreements. You can call those contracts. So it's between you and a group of others, or it's between you and one other person, or maybe it's just between you and your higher self. And so there's many layers of agreements and contracts you could look at that are stored here as this sort of gateway opens up in your heart center to that portal of information. So you're not holding the entirety of that information in your physical body here in the heart, but this is the place in which your body stores the permission slip to access that space. I hope that makes sense. So you've probably heard the expression that the heart is the seat of the soul. And what does that really mean? How do we look at the soul experience perhaps from a higher perspective, and not so much of the very average acceptance that, you know, your soul is eternal and it takes many shapes and forms and different bodies. So we have all of that awareness, but the seat of the soul expression is a really unique piece of energy to put your consciousness through and really allow your body to give you pieces of what that means for you. So this is not something that I wish to define, but I do invite you to consider that this is something worth spending your attention, spending your time exploring, and every time you revisit it, you may have a different piece of knowledge or wisdom that comes to the forefront. So the seat of the soul is a very fancy way of saying that this is the part in which your physical body accepts your cosmic self along with your very physical vessel self. And this is the space in which the two worlds sort of collide and create this abundance of energy here that really is you. So the soul doesn't look at the lower aspect of the physical body as less than. It doesn't look at it as, oh, it's not as big and eternal and vibrationally high as the cosmic expression of you. It doesn't compare. But for the sake of language, when you're trying to teach something, it's very easy to get wrapped up into the contrast and into the misunderstandings that one is not better than the other. They're both needed and necessary, and they both play very different roles. So please don't mistake my words for any form of elitism or hierarchy. It's just that this is the space where there's a bit more information about who you really are and less about the physical vessel as we get into the higher chakras, starting with this heart center. So when we talked about the third chakra in the previous video, we recognized that that's the space in which the earthly version of you and the cosmic version of you create this circular willpower center. So how does that differentiate between what I was just speaking to as far as the heart chakra being a meld? Well, as we rise from this willpower space in the solar plexus up to the heart center, then there's a bit more of the expanded version here in the chest. So it's not that there's a suppression here in the solar, it's that the solar is not intended to have the wisdom of who you are as a soul. It's here to help you produce the action-based energy to manifest and to create the reality around you. Now the heart center is taking that information up here and allowing the expression to be fluid, where it loops down and around and side to side. It allows that fluidity to actually manifest from more of who you really are as a soul. So if we look at this as, you know, there's one consciousness that's been split into many different bodies, that is the simple version of the we are all one law, right? So as each one of us embodies this fragmented version of that source energy that's split for the experience of having lifetimes and different manifestations and realities created together and apart simultaneously, we don't really lose that connection as a whole. We just have the illusion that we've lost the connection of the whole. So there's an intentional piece of feeling separate in order to really fully express who you are, to have your own unique expression, and to feel all of the emotions and densities that it triggers within us, to feel that sense of separation. And this is really where we find that information stored in the body, because the heart is all about controlling the energies around belonging. So that's on both polarities. So we've got the belonging that we feel when we find a group that we actually have camaraderie with, and we're really seen and loved and cherished and honored and respected equally. So we have that expression of belonging. But we also have the lack of belonging stored here, which is that feeling of perhaps feeling a bit more like a black sheep and not quite sure where you fit in. You feel like an alien. And for a lot of us, that's how we spend most of our life, or we go through cycles and periods and patterns of revisiting that same sort of expression or awareness over and over again. And that's really just the shadow aspect of the same energy of belonging. But this is really governed here in our heart chakra, which is why looking at that law of one as really the foundational issue is very helpful when we go to heal ourselves on where it might be feeling like we have some bruising or some trauma or some lack. So the heart center really calls for those bigger concept healings, because if you have no awareness that we're actually all one, you could still show up to work on your heart center, but it's going to be a bit more difficult to have the analytics of the mind allow you to really forgive and to really let go and to allow the past to be shifted in new perspectives that actually fill you back up with empowerment. So it's hard to allow that type of transformation to occur without the awareness that we are all one. It's almost as if that awareness allows us to forgive on a deeper level. It allows us to let go on a deeper level. It's like a type of acceptance that's a bit radical, and it allows for more trust, and you become more fluid in your honoring of change and of trusting change. So when circumstances and events play out that create pain and trauma, the space that responds immediately to that data of information is the heart center, because that data is getting flown through the circulation of your body and all the energetics surrounding it, but it's really getting filed away in your Akashic records in that moment. So this isn't so much of a permanent thing, because I don't want to teach this and have you think that as you experience something it's there kind of forever, because what happens is you start to play with that and you start to create different adaptations to this one singular circumstance, because the reality is that if there is no time, then you've got a multitude of perspectives you get to play with and choose at varying degrees. And you don't have to choose one over the other. You can just sort of sit and look at all of them and turn this circumstance around and start to play with it and look at it from many different angles and just sort of be in awe, in observation of all that you could choose. And really what you walk away from when you allow yourself to arrive at that type of processing, it creates a higher vibrational version of you that's in the physical, that creates a different state of being embodied in the vessel, that then says to the universe through its energetics, it's communicating all the time, it says, I'm allowing, I'm accepting, I'm in a state of surrender as I trust that everything that's arising within and around me is here to serve me. And if I can allow myself to show up to whatever that is with observational energy versus judgment, versus attachment, versus resistance, then, only then, can I truly evolve. And so there's a bit more of a radical energy here in the heart chakra that allows for things to flow and move through you. And so these really specific traumas that may come to mind for you during this series, really looking at it from a playful space and saying, okay, I know that this experience really caused me a lot of pain, but how can I look at it from a multitude of perspectives? Maybe I can look at it through the child version of me. How would the child version of me have responded to that circumstance? What about the 80-year-old version of me? What about the version of me that was like a warrior in a past life? What about the version of me that's coming as like a parent, almost outside of myself, trying to console me in that moment of the pain? And so you get to play with all these different perspectives, knowing that as we are all one, when you allow yourself to pull in this version of other perspectives, you actually benefit to such a degree that's hard to put language to, but it is much more in alignment with natural law that says it's never just one thing, it's never just one answer. As soon as you think that you've found that, it ripples up apart and starts to unveil the next layer. And so there's never solid truths. There's always this flexibility in truth that makes it really tricky when it comes to appeasing our analytics. So I encourage you to spend some time thinking about some of the main traumas that have occurred in this lifetime for you, or just things that didn't feel good, or perhaps certain areas of your personality that you aren't so proud of, or maybe you're noticing a pattern in how you aren't really feeling like it's truly you, but you want to visit that pattern with a new light, with a new perspective. And as you open up those awarenesses, know that you are making adjustments, you're making little addendums to your contracts and to all of that source information that is channeling through your heart center at all times. So thinking about this from a grander perspective, imagine this sort of heart connection being a place at which we all communicate with one another. So we are communicating with our entire auric field, but just for a moment here, imagine that there is a simple cord that connects us to source energy, which then connects all of us to each other. Well, as that becomes something that you feel into, you start to understand that as one person experiences something, it's actually part of your experience. It's something you get to play with the perspectives of and take it in and filter it through and allow yourself to find a way that this can empower you, that this can serve you in some sense. So you don't have to have the totality of all experiences to be able to benefit from the multitude of perspectives that are available to you at all times. So if you have a friend that's gone through a series of trauma and you're there supporting that friend and you're just being a good listener and allowing your body to sort of match the vibrational energy field of that experience that they're really perceiving as theirs. You know, it feels unique to them. It feels deeply personal because it is. But there's also a layer outside of that that makes it a bit of yours. And now that you've engaged with it, there's an even bigger magnification of that connection. And so it's an opportunity where you have a choice. You have many choices. One of those choices could be to shy away from it and to get scared about feeling what your friend is feeling and taking it on, right? Because we have this analytical center that says, wait a minute, if I'm feeling what this person's feeling, that's bad. That means that we've lost our boundary and I need space and time to kind of, create my bubble again. So we've got a bit of judgment that's sort of snuck in as we attempt to teach these concepts of awareness of our own energetic bubble. There's a misinterpretation, there's a misunderstanding that it's not really all or nothing. It's a bit of everything. So I hope that makes sense, but it's really looking at where have we taken a concept that serves us and accidentally made it into a shadow aspect that's in a sense catapulting us away from the very thing we're being called to look at. So I invite you to consider that rather than getting very resistant to sharing space with people or getting resistant to the idea of feeling what other people are feeling or taking it on. Allow yourself to view the body as more of a filter, that nothing gets to stay here that doesn't belong to you, or nothing gets to stay here that doesn't serve you as a whole. So having that experience of feeling what your friend is feeling is not really going to damage you. It's actually just giving you some insight, some education, and it's like taking a flashlight and shining it right on something that you already had within you. So there's a vibrational match that you have to what your friend is experiencing right now. So what you're feeling is actually yours. It's just that in the moment it makes more sense on a rational level that you're feeling what they're feeling because you weren't feeling into that prior to your experience and sharing space and hearing this person's story. But if you need to revisit that acceptance that your body was simply carrying that vibration without an awareness until you shared space with your friend, and now you have the awareness, now you can begin to see how everything is falling into a type of divine synchronicity. You were meant to be there with that friend to get triggered, to get lit up in things that you were holding on to that perhaps need to be acknowledged and just said hello to so it can pass through you. So thinking about the body as a filter, you become less resistant to what is. You become more trusting and allowing, and that type of energy affects your state of being, which then creates an entirely different world around you. Because what's happening is, just as we talked about in the Akashic records, the time not really being real, there's a multitude of timelines that are all sort of waving very, very close to each other. So as we make changes from second to second, because every second there's billions of changes being made in your energy field. Totally crazy, right? But every second you have this opportunity to really bring more change there, or to allow more change there. And as that's happening, you're creating a flux, a shift, where sometimes you opt into one timeline, and then if you can't really hold that state for that long and you kind of slip into something that's a bit more in the pain scale, or a bit of trauma, or maybe it's sadness or grief, then you're going to dip down just a little bit into a different timeline, and then you're going to come back up. So we're constantly doing this all the time. And the thing that's really unique about our expression of that is knowing that as we make a conscious change in our heart center, it's a bit more of the acceptance piece to allow ourselves to find the timeline that really serves us in that moment, that allows us to have the full expression of who we really are, and not operating from this past version of who we are or this future version of who we are. It's more in present time. So we're constantly looking to achieve more of presence in the present moment, because that is truly the only energy that really exists for us. We are constantly being programmed, whether it be through just being birthed onto this planet, or looking at it from societal programming, or even genderized programming and your parents' effect. All of these things have been reaffirming a belief to you that there is a need for us to be constantly thinking about the past or the future, and that pressure that it puts on our energetic space can really be found here in the heart center, that says, well, but I have this anchor here, this little seedling that's always in my body, that says that that doesn't really feel true. It's not that we can't visit the past and learn more things and take perspectives and grow, and that we can't look at the future and attempt to create a different trajectory, or plant some energy in that space for things that we want to experience in the coming days. It's not that those things are bad, but we don't want our percentage of ourself to be split in such a way that it is on an average person, where we've got portions of us really invested in the past so much that we actually give perhaps 30% of our energy there, and then perhaps another 30% really worried about the future, looking at the fear-based programming, right? So this fear-based programming always has our body sort of split, where there's not really much left of us in the present. And what's happening is, because we're missing that energy, it's very difficult for the body to go ahead and create the reality that you actually desire, because there's not enough of you really there to create and generate that momentum and the flow. So the heart always remembers. The heart is the space in which we have that dominant recall that says, oh, I need to be right here, right now. And we call our energy back from the past, and we call our energy from the future, and we bring it all right here. And this actually creates a deeper level of healing for us right here, right now. But it also ripples into the past and heals the past, and ripples into the future and heals the future. So it's a much more practical and, let's say, efficient way of running our energy, by having all of us right here, right now, present here. And so when we think about healing the heart, it's very much about having that awareness of, you know, we are split from this source energy, having individual experiences that we all get to benefit from, and express ourselves through that version of the ego that says, I am Libby, this is who I am, I was born on May 18th, 1988. You know, you have these sort of labels and boxes and things that really define you, and I'm not saying that that isn't true. But when we have the underlying foundation of, this is true, and it's also true that I have this experience, this opportunity to really benefit from everyone else's experiences on the planet, without the demand on my energy field to have to go experience that myself in order to have all of the information. So we're really living simultaneously in a matrix system that operates as one being learning. And we just have these unique micro expressions in our own energy field of our portion of the story, and we get to have that, but we also get to have the magnitude of everyone else's story. And whatever perspective makes you feel empowered from all of that is the one that I invite you to allow to take home in your body. Because if we don't give that a directive, the body will attach to something that feels either a bit overwhelmed, or it feels lack, or it feels abandoned. Sometimes it even feels deeply disconnected, where you're not even really feeling into your heart center. So having this permission slip sitting in the heart that says, I get to experience everything that me in this body experiences, but I also have the freedom to tap into energy that other people are experiencing, and I get to learn through them. I get to view all the different options of perspectives that I could have, and I can just observe all of them. I don't have to have the analytical addiction to having to choose one over the other. I get to just say, oh, look at how there's all of these things. Fascinating. And that's the healthiest way to live in what we call neutrality. So a state of neutrality is not saying you don't care. It's not saying you don't have an opinion. And it's not saying you don't have desire. It's just saying that you're sitting in the center point at which you can view both negative aspects and positive aspects and hold them side by side and just sort of observe. It's like, wow. You know, we have criminals in the world. These are perfect examples of this learning. We have criminals. We have people that do harm to others. We have people that misbehave and don't seem to really learn their lessons, and so they're in a sense rebelling against the system that we've put in place. Well, this is a perfect example to look at. How do we look at this one person's experiences, and what do we take from that? How do we learn from that? Maybe we hear the story and we hear those circumstances and we find pain in our physical body as we hear the story. Well, that invites us to give the body attention and say, wow, I'm holding on to some pain here in my throat as I'm reading the story of what this person has chosen to express in this lifetime. Maybe I have a match to something from either this lifetime or another. Doesn't matter. I'm going to give myself the love that I deserve right now and go ahead and heal that space that's getting very triggered as I'm engaging with somebody else's experience. And so there's many, many different ways that you could visit just this one scenario I'm giving you. Another perspective would be, why? Why does this person choose these things? What sort of trauma or pain or suffering causes somebody to do harm to another person? Does trauma cause another trauma? Does a victim then become a perpetrator? Does the victim of that experience and that criminal that attacked this person, how do they experience this? What has this affected in their reality? You know, both sides, both positive, both negative, and just really fishing in a sense for the multitudes of perspectives that you could have just from narrowing in, just zooming in on this one person's story. And so it's very important that we learn as humans to give ourselves freedom to tap into perspectives in this way. And it's only through that permission slip do we actually reach profound enlightenment, because this is how we detach from judgment. This is how we detach from ego. This is how we detach from the need to control things and to feel responsible. It's also where we learn a lot more about what is natural. What is natural law? And how does natural law, how does source energy allow for all of these things to manifest and occur and be expressed through without us getting in the way of those chosen expressions? How do we respect it? How do we honor that without feeling as if there's something wrong, something that needs to be fixed? And so this heart center is really important for how we relate to that concept. How we relate to each other is really the microcosm of this bigger picture that I've just painted for you on how to view and work with multitudes of perspectives. Now, when we look at perspective, the one that you may find resonating with you the most, the one that makes you feel full of your own light, the one that gives you a bit of joy or love or acceptance, something that makes you feel good, that is the perspective that you may choose to hold on to for a period of time to somewhat satiate the mind. So maybe this needs another example. Let's say that you were working a job you really loved and suddenly you were let go. Maybe there wasn't enough money to pay for you to work anymore, and so now you're left feeling a bit abandoned and betrayed because maybe you were working really hard in this job and you were climbing up and there was goals you were reaching and you were so close, and then they let you go. It's like getting the rug pulled out from underneath you. So now you have all these triggering aspects in your reality of betrayal, and the camaraderie that you had in your workplace may have just totally gotten shattered. And perhaps there's another layer of abundance trigger. So now you have a feeling of lack and fear of being able to survive. And maybe you're upset with yourself because you didn't see it coming. And so there's all these layers of the trauma over one thing, like getting let go from your job, right? So your initial response is to show up to all of those things. It's not wrong to have all of those perspectives. But what will happen is as that starts to mold and shift itself, the body will start to gently guide you into questioning that perhaps you were let go from this job and it was perceived as a type of failure, or perceived as a type of betrayal or abandonment, or it's triggered all this fear and it's a bad thing, right? So you've got this perspective of it being negative. But how do we look at that same set of circumstances, that same event, and paint it in a positive light, paint it in a positive aspect? So the body will gently guide you through that shadow side. It'll say, okay, feel everything you need to feel, look at all the negatives, let it rise up, let yourself feel into it, because this is what healing is. You're not just healing the wound of you losing your job, you're healing all the wounds that match that vibration that you've had prior to this. And maybe it's even from other lifetimes. So there's a magnitude that you're healing through this one simple channel of an experience that you've recently had. So you let yourself bubble up and overflow and boil out and cry and wail and scream and be angry and frustrated and all the things, and that is appropriate. And as you go through that, it's like going through the tunnel and it's very dark, 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 and then all of a sudden there's a little bit of light, and this is the body's natural instinct to guide you to a higher perspective so you're not carrying the density of the pain that you felt before. So as you're being guided into the light, what does that look like? Well, it's like suddenly questioning something. It might be subtle, like, maybe I lost my job because there's another job coming that's in more alignment with my passion, more in alignment with my excitement. Or maybe through the experience of losing your job, you apply for unemployment, and then the unemployment check arrives and you open it and you look at it and you realize that your abundance fears perhaps get to settle themselves for a moment because you're making more money on your unemployment than you did when you were employed. So you've let yourself off the hook of fear by a small notch. Doesn't mean you've totally repaired the sadness or the grief about the loss, but it's picking you up a little bit energetically by having this bit of a safety net, because now you know that you're going to be okay financially. And not only are you going to be okay, you're actually better than you were before, and it's sort of a mind fuck. And so your body goes, whoa, I really need to revisit. Maybe this experience of losing my job is not really a failure and a loss. It was just a closure. It was just an end, and there's a new door opening, and I'm starting to feel into what that is. And then maybe a few days later, opportunity sort of knocks at your door. Oh, look, you're going to keep your unemployment, and you're going to be able to do this side job, and you're going to make a bunch of cash, and it's all going to be abundant, and you're going to feel excited because you're doing something you really wanted to do for a long time. So those are just little examples that I'm throwing at you to really imagine what that transition looks like, going through the experience of what you're feeling into a different higher perspective. And ultimately the higher perspective is the one that you're going to let take hold in your body as the memory, because that allows your body to hold a lighter vibration going forward. You don't want to carry around these denser experiences, the denser emotions all the time, because that's just going to be there, and you're going to start to mirror back to yourself through your reality that you're still holding on to that there. If something is light and it can breathe through it and kind of pulse, imagine it not being like a lump of sticky stuff. It's actually got this molding and fluidity to it that allows for movement to continue, which means it ultimately serves you to be carrying it around, right? So this is just a way to kind of imagine and wrap your mind around the why we wouldn't want to carry a negative experience versus a positive. It's not that one's better than the other, it's that we're talking about the weighted piece of our energetic field and how it manifests our reality. And so really it is up to us to make choices on viewing different perspectives that allow ourselves to climb out of the negative victimhood and arise into the empowered state of being, no matter what circumstances happen, no matter what event has taken place. It doesn't matter. It's like the circumstances really don't matter. It's your state of being that matters. So when you fish around for the perspective that feels really good, then you arise at a higher vibrational adoption in your energy field that then creates more flow. It creates more space for your body to actually attract what you desire, and it's not going to have to run through a filter of some of the pain and suffering that you've been holding on to. So you're just learning how to be true to yourself, be authentic, and allow that authenticity to transition into a higher state of being naturally, which is what the law of nature invites us to do. So this isn't really something that people need to have conscious awareness of, because oftentimes people will fall into that pattern of, at first it's all this grief, and then you become very grateful. You find gratitude for that experience. And so a lot of people end up there on their own natural course, even if they have no awareness of what I'm discussing. But we all know that there are also the opposite group of people that resist the healing. They resist the release. They can't let go. And so the attachment to the story of this happened to me and it's not okay is very rigid and dense, and it creates a huge block in the energy field. And then it may appear as if the universe is sort of punishing you, because carrying that huge lump of coal around all the time is going to tell the universe and tell the energy around you as you're creating your reality that this is what you deserve. And so because you're so attached to that, it's going to create a mirror reality around you that just mirrors back to you how true this victimhood really is, when really it's an illusion. It's there to wake you up and shock you out of it and catapult you a different direction. But many people are resistant to that exercise, resistant to dropping into their heart space and really feeling into this truth. They just want to be right. And any type of wanting to be right is actually generated from a lower chakra experience. That's very primal, it's very animalistic. So it doesn't really have any room to create these higher vibrational expressions. So it will indeed hold you back from growth, and you can only have so much at a time. And just what that feels or experience is like is less than desirable. So the idea is to hop on board consciously with your healing and create a much deeper level of change than you would be able to create with somebody who's not aware, who's not awake. But I think it's important sometimes to mention that, of course, there are people that aren't quite spiritually aware that are still healing themselves through this process that I described, because naturally their body is giving themselves little things here in their aura and they're picking up on it, like, oh, you know, that one time I got kicked out of my apartment in Florida meant that I had to move to Ohio, and I've met the most amazing person in Ohio. So had I not been kicked out of my apartment in Florida, I would have never met this person that I feel like I was meant to meet in Ohio. So you have these these aha moments that come that don't require a deep level of spirituality awareness. And I think that's really brilliant, because there's really no pressure in these lifetimes for us to have all the answers, to have this all-knowing experience. And I think that's really beautiful and not touched upon very often. But this is something that you're going to find in the heart space. This is something that the heart chakra really governs, is the awareness of our relationship to the world around us. So we think about the heart chakra, we have the very obvious knowing that it governs love, that it governs love for ourselves and for the love that we allow ourselves to receive and the love that we give. And of course, it also governs relationships as a whole. So we look at that as friendships or partnerships or relationships to our family. So this is a higher aspect of that second chakra, family energy, that we touched upon. So the family energy relationships that sit in the second chakra might be a bit more of the challenging aspects, whereas in the heart center, as we become a bit of a lighter vibrational experience here, you may actually discover that this is the aspect of family interpretation, of recognizing the bigger picture. So this is where you might discover, yeah, it was difficult growing up in a childhood with parents that didn't really know what to do with me, or perhaps they were so programmed, they were very wrapped up in their own world and didn't really have a lot of permission for me to be myself, or didn't know how to support me, or they were kind of stuck in their own programming and it was a difficult experience. So those are true and valid things, but what you'll find in the heart chakra about that story is what the benefit was for you. So having a family that didn't accept you catapulted you into survival energy. It made you stronger. It made you have to learn how to cope and how to dive into self-love in a greater degree than you would have had you had family that just showered you with love all the time. So it stretched you into uncomfortable places, and through that stretching it evolved you into a greater sense of being, which perhaps is something that you on a soul level were really seeking to experience in this lifetime. So it's the higher aspects of why things happen and how it served you, and just some perspectives to kind of play with that might feel better in your body to hold on to. It has a bit more of the accountability aspect to it as well. Like, I clearly chose these parents because this is what they need. You know, it's the relationship aspect. How did you serve them? Maybe in their perspective, they're like, my child was so difficult, I didn't know what to do with them. And then you're over here with your perspective, like, I was the easiest child, you just tried to mold me into a box that I didn't fit into. And so you both have these very unique experiences and perspectives of the same circumstance, of the same time period, right? So it's a very interesting thing to play with, and know that that type of information is what we find here in the heart chakra. So this is a huge portal of all that is, all the information that ever was and everything that will ever be. And this is the beginning of really that cosmic version of acceptance that we get to be both. We get to be both galactic cosmic beings that are divine and totally free and constantly evolving and infinite. And we also get to have this perspective of the very visceral experience of being in the physical body, and how sometimes the body doesn't always reflect who you really feel like you are in your heart center, or maybe you feel deeply connected to a multitude of bodies and it's confusing when you look in the mirror, you know? So there's so many different aspects that we could look at within this portal, that it really brings home your true vibration. So this is really your soul signature enters through the vessel here and acknowledges all of the multitudes of truths about being in your body right now, and also being in bodies in past lives during that period, and then also who you are as a light being that's taken form into this shell. So it's multifaceted. So when we look at what does the heart chakra govern on a physical level, we're also looking at the lungs. So our breathing, it affects the depth that we allow ourselves to breathe and to channel and move energy. So everything that is basically occupying the chest space is governed by the heart chakra, because again, the heart chakra is quite large and it governs quite a bit. So we're looking at the shoulders and how the energy runs from the heart chakra up through, meeting right at that throat center. So that's the next video that we're getting to, is the heart. And then it actually goes outward like this, just like how we were talking about that kind of winged experience earlier. This is exactly how the movement of the heart chakra loops. So it comes up here and it loops out and down the shoulders, all the way down your arms and out your palms. And so your heart is very much expressed through your hands. And if we think about all the things we do with our hands every day and how we create with them, and we're constantly putting things together and taking things apart, and when we meet someone, we shake their hand, and when we say hello or goodbye, we wave. And so we're constantly looking at these very interesting and sort of playful expressions of how we use our hands. And it's fun to think about them being an extension of your heart. And even in hugs, right? We think about hugs. There's a lot of really interesting pictures that come to mind when I was sitting with this in preparation for making this video. One thing that came to mind was handstands, and I'd never really thought about it this way before, and not encouraging anyone to do a handstand if you're not practiced or ready for that, but just thinking about the visualization of a handstand and how here you are upside down, you know, completely upside down perspective of the world, and all your blood is rushing to your head, and it's kind of uncomfortable experience. You know, it's a bit euphoric, but it's also a bit terrifying, and you're supporting your body with your hands, right? And your hands are touching the earth. And it was like suddenly I had this awareness that handstands are very much an ode to how our heart really grounds through the earth, and it just supports us. It's just supporting the entire body. And I never really thought about it before that way, how the hands are really a representation of the heart. So sure, there's other things that will come to mind for you about heart chakra and how it relates to the shoulders and the arms, but that was just a fun one that came up, so I thought I'd share. So of course, most people carry a lot of energy around this shoulder area, especially around the back side, and it's so bad. I mean, I am no exception. It's so bad that majority of people, especially when you go into a chiropractic center and discover how many people have this going on, there's a tendency to roll our shoulders forward now. And so our posture is sort of changing as we evolve, and it has more to do with, you know, the variety of stressors in our life, how much we feel like we're taking the weight of the world on, especially when you're a sensitive person. But there's also another expression to think about here as the shoulders are rolling forward. You know, we've got the standard analytics of, well, it's because we're doing our computer stuff and everything's happening here. Yeah, sure, but there's also this need for us to feel like we're protecting ourselves all the time. There's a bit of this attack energy that's kind of radiating out of the atmosphere that's not really coming from Earth so much as this collective thought form that's really become so enormous that it feels very tangible and very real. And maybe for some people, they may just experience that as a type of anxiety, a type of restlessness, a type of I've got to keep moving and get things done. So everybody's version of interpretation of that is very unique to you and valid. I'm just looking at this evolution of how we've created this need for protection of our heart space through the shoulder rolling, and through this sort of experience of, I've seen multitudes of people fall asleep, especially when I'm doing sound baths, but even just in my personal life. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen people sleeping, even in a nap, even in a quick snooze, with their shoulders rolled forward and their hands across their chest like this. So what does that say about humanity? And it's not a bad thing, because I don't want to paint a picture of this being good or bad. I just want to propose the observation to you as well, because it's something I'm sitting with. Is what does that mean? Does that mean that our bodies are constantly interpreting this energy around us as we don't quite feel that safe and we need to guard this heart center? Is the heart center so sacred that even when we're sleeping and our astral body is flowing out, that we feel a bit like we need to guard this space? Is it that when we spend time with other people physically, that's when our shoulders really guard ourselves? You know, it's just, I just want to invite you to think about it. There's no answer I'm trying to push here today. I find it very fascinating that it's like 7 out of 10 people are experiencing this body expression, and I think it's time that we visit some of the questions of why. And again, holding all the perspectives, looking at all of it. What is the shadow aspect? Are we in fear? Are we in anxiety? Or maybe it's a positive aspect. Maybe it's that this space is so sacred and special that we actually have created a bit of an energetic, you know, wall that perhaps is protecting us from getting too much information stuck in there, or, you know, who knows? I'm just throwing out different perspectives for you guys to think about, ponder, and play with, and none of it is right or true or correct or wrong. It's just part of this playful game that I invite you to sit with. And it's just fascinating to think about all of the ways that we adapt to our reality, and how the body is constantly giving us insight as to what that adaptation is actually for. Or maybe it's uniquely personal to you and you can start to change it. Maybe it's something you just observe in others and you don't observe in yourself. Maybe it's something you've been working on for a long period of time. Maybe you notice certain patterns where there's times where you're very postured, you know, upright, and then something happens like a pain or a trauma, and then it kind of comes back to this. So just notice. That's all I'm suggesting. Just notice. So when we go through a series of traumas, the space that we usually see affected on a soul level is the development of what we could call the heart wall. So that's just kind of a fancy term for this energy that's been postulated in an effort to create a bit of a bubble here of protection for the heart chakra itself. And this happens in its own timing, happens in its own pressure, in its own sort of size, shape, strength, color, quality, texture. All of those things are very unique. So there's nothing that really is a very obvious, oh, that's the heart wall and I see it the same in everybody. But there is this sort of sense that you'll get when you're reading energy, whether it be for yourself or for somebody else, that there's a bit of like a pulsing, kind of pushing almost against your energy field. So if you were to think about it on feeling the heart chakra with your hands, you would, you know, take your hands and kind of activate them, which again, think about now as your heart is feeling this, right? Kind of cool when you think about how you use hands-on healing. It's really all about the heart. So we go and we create this little friction here in our hands to open up the hand and heart chakra, right? And then we start to feel, and then all of a sudden you might be like, ooh, it feels like there's a bit of a guard here. Like there's a bit of a wall that starts to just sort of form right here. And then you're gonna feel around and be like, does it stretch the entirety of the chest? Does it actually happen on the back side as well? Or maybe it's just in the front. And so everybody has their own unique form of this, and this isn't something that everyone has, but a lot of people do. And so really what we're going to get into with the guided meditation portion of this is investigating, navigating what to do with that heart wall if you find it. And maybe it's a tiny obstruction, maybe it's a really big obstruction, maybe it's really creating a lot of limitation, maybe it's just recently kind of set up because something recently happened that felt like it invaded your personal space and you kind of put this wall up to protect yourself. So I'm not inviting you to slip into judgment about the wall. I just want you to honor it. Just, oh, there it is. Let's find out why it's there. Where it belongs. Does it need to be there still? It's like asking the questions and kind of peeling the wall back and looking at what's underneath that felt vulnerable enough to need the wall in the first place. So this heart chakra is all about compassion and the compassion that we have for ourselves. So investigating the heart wall is really a term that you could look at as engaging a bit more compassion for yourself. And through that channel of releasing and allowing more compassion to take home here, it actually ripples into how much compassion you have for everyone else. So it changes the way that you view your reality and everyone in it. So how you relate can change from healing your heart wall. So if you've ever had betrayal, this is undoubtedly where a heart wall would come in. The heart wall says, I opened up to you and I trusted you, and then you betrayed me, which means now it's not safe for me to be open anymore. And so it creates this sort of door that just blocks here. Well, what does that really do for our energetic system? It creates more chaos than we're excited about managing, because now your energy flow is very limited. So when we discover a heart wall, it can be a really transformational experience to let it go, or to create some form of a change around it, give it a healing. Maybe we're not really ready to let it go fully because there's so many layers of why it's there. So it's all okay. It's all in its own divine timing. But just having the awareness to even look for that and to really sense it can create a magnificent change in the entirety of your energy field. So just like we talked about in the previous videos, this isn't just about the heart chakra. This is about how your entire energy system flows and works. And if you're trying to open your third eye and have all these seeing abilities, you may not have the experience of that fully. And the reason why could be because of your heart chakra having a heart wall that says, I'm too vulnerable to see things. I can't see things because I won't know what to do with it, and I'm already feeling overwhelmed and it's intense in here. And so what you might discover is that with your effort to open your third eye and you're putting all this energy in here and focusing on this chakra, it could actually be your heart chakra wall that's causing that disruption in the energy flow. So it's important through this entire series, this is why I created it, to have this awareness of what's going on in each individual chakra, but also the bigger picture of how it all relates together and how manipulating one, and I'm not saying in a negative manipulation, I'm talking about a conscious manipulation, a change, creating that transformation, letting things go, detaching from old stuff. So ushering in that change ripples into everything and changes you in that exact moment. So there's things that will start to unfold and take place even a few days after that change is created. So the change just keeps rolling like a wheel. The wheel just keeps spinning. And so before you know it, your whole entire aura has changed colors. You've let go of various little things that were hanging out in your energy bubble. So the heart wall may actually prevent you from even the lower chakra experiences. So maybe that's a prevention in your body really grounding. Maybe there's a root chakra sensation that you picked up on that's like, wow, my body really doesn't feel safe here all the time, and it disconnects from the grounding cord multiple times a day, and I have to really consciously bring my attention there. Well, perhaps it's time to consider that that could be occurring because there's actually a heart wall in place that says, I'm not meant to be here, I feel like an alien, I feel ostracized and let down and disappointed by my peers, and my relations have been really poor, which means I definitely can't trust my body to ground into the earth. I need to be disconnected and sort of floating up here so I can stay in control. And so it's a misinterpretation of energy, obviously, because of course you're meant to be here, and none of those things are in nature true. But if you do have those beliefs kind of sneaking up and creating a change in your energy field, it's important to note whether the heart wall is actually preventing your spinal column from even flowing Kundalini healing energy, or flowing your spinal fluid through the remainder of your body and your chakra systems, and it could actually be detaching your energy system from your grounded state of being. And if you don't find that heart wall and you just keep postulating that grounding cord every single day, there may be a bit more of an exhaustion expression of, gosh, I'm so tired and frustrated of having to revisit this. You know, at the top of every hour, it seems like I've disconnected again, you know? So finding amusement, first of all, in that discovery, but also looking at the other chakras. Maybe there's another chakra that's trying to govern my root chakra right now, and oftentimes it has a lot to do with a heart wall. So I hope that's helpful. It's not something I intend to make you fearful of or worry about, but it's very, very common for us to develop different forms of walls around our heart center as a sort of unconscious protection. And it perhaps comes from other lifetimes where that was really needed. But it does limit our reality, and it does limit the way that we create our day-to-day and how we're feeling. So it limits the vibrational shift in our emotional spectrum, so you can't even really reach a high level of excitement when you've got a suppression going on there. You can only get so far. So heart wall is very, very important to spend some time exploring and playing with. So we will definitely get into that with the meditation portion. Going into how we think about relationship shadow aspects, right? So sometimes there's a bit of trauma stored here in the heart around vibrations of anger, vibrations of sabotage and distrust, whether that be for ourselves or for others or both. So those are some of the shadow aspects. You know, are we able to let go of a situation or circumstance that happened to us? Maybe we wanted to be right in something. We felt very assertive that we were right about something and we didn't really get our way. Those things tend to show up here in the heart center because it's such a conflict. It can tend to take home and really kind of fester there. So those are energies to look for. And then the other thing that I want to point out is thinking about clingy and neediness. And so whether that be about you being clingy or needy, or maybe other people in your life being clingy and needy, this is the center at which you're really going to notice those contract agreements with those people. So you may start to discover the energy latched into your energetic system in your lower chakras that we talked about in the previous videos, but here in the heart center is where you're going to find that agreement that you've made to either be that version of you or to interact and relate with people in your life that have that effect on you. So it can create a sense of anxiety, and the anxiety energy is really, really palpable in the heart chakra when we've got an overload and overwhelm of people who are needy climbing into our space and wanting what our heart chakra is capable of manifesting or feeling or expressing in the world. So again, I see this physically showing up in our bodies as pain across the top part of our shoulder blades. It's really kind of this whole general area here with all the way down to the base of the lungs, linking back up through the backside, and so encompassing our entire shoulders, our armpits, which is interesting to think about because there's so much detox energy associated with this space, right? And just how much of this entire energetic portal here really governs the anxiety center. So oftentimes we can associate our anxiety with something that's occurred that perhaps caused that reaction, but there's also the unique experience of just being anxious and not being able to define really where it came from. And this is the center that I would begin to explore any agreements that you have with other people who may be asserting themselves into your heart center and thus creating a bit of a discord because it's not your energy. And the heart goes, well, now I'm trying to run this other energy through here, and it's a conflict. It's not really taking home. There's no space for it. And so what will happen is it will generate a nervous system response, which then activates adrenaline. It activates all of your glands to start over communicating and over producing. And now you've got this experience, this expression of a physical anxiety. So I hope that makes sense, but really we're looking for how many people are reliant upon your support. How many people are reliant upon your love and compassion, and perhaps it feels like they need you more than you need them. those types of experiences are very palpable here in the heart chakra. And maybe it's something a bit more innocent, like having a young child that of course is going to need you for a larger period of time. That's a bit more appropriate because, you know, between the ages of about 1 and 9, they're very much corded into you. It's not until they begin to explore more of their own identity that they don't really require so much neediness. So for a period of your life, you may experience that sensation of being really overwhelmed and needed by another being, and it might be your child, which is an agreement that you might decide to keep because it feels appropriate. So we're not really coming in with a lot of judgment here. We're not coming in with a need to sort of fix and, you know, totally, you know, clean house, but really just exploring the variables of why. And, you know, what you might find is that it's inappropriate for certain people to have that yes, it's okay for you to cord in here from you. And so now your yes is going to become a no. And then you might sort of discover a few people's energy and say, well, this feels appropriate for right now. And so it's all okay. I'm just inviting you to really think about why this center feels so busy and important. And part of it is just narrowing in on our relationships and how we relate to others and how much people are subscribing to our vibration, our soul signature, and what that gives them. Maybe it gives them a bit of vicarious living. Maybe it gives them ideas that are part of your wisdom that help them on their path. Maybe it's just an energetic exchange of compassion and acceptance. And I think even in the lower aspects of, you know, perhaps losing your shit and really getting angry with someone might actually serve them. Maybe they need to actually experience somebody being angry with them in order to open up to something that they need to reflect on within themselves. So this is why neutrality is really key to healing things, because things happen for a multitude of reasons, and it's not about judgment. It's about allowing all of the perspectives to be equal. And that's how Source really views the world, views humans, views experiences as quite neutral, because everything is there to serve you. It's only when you're in the body and you're experiencing it through this filter of judgment and societal programming and all of the history that we recall without realizing that's what we're doing, the dormant activations of our past life memories that sometimes get triggered, and now we paint this picture that we only want a life of all of this range of emotions that are positive, and we don't want to have any suffering or negative emotions. But what we can't really see very easily or experience or accept very easily in this lifetime is that both of them are needed and necessary. And just because you have a preference for one over the other doesn't mean that you can't also accept that there's actually a need for you to have this pain, to have the suffering, to have the wounds, to have all of that fear, those things that actually create your launching pad for a deeper level of transformation and healing, which is why ultimately it's all quite neutral. I hope this makes sense. So when we think about the heart chakra and its association with colors, we have 2 colors that show up for the heart chakra. So again, this is just a tool to play with. It's not what you might find in your heart space. If you're scanning your body and you look at your heart and it's more of a orange or maybe it's purple, that's amazing. There's no need for you to try and really force that color to match the colors that I'm about to tell you. It's just your observation of, okay, well, what does that color orange or purple really indicate is going on here? You know, you're interpreting the vibration of color into a set of data that will actually give you explanations for the why. And that's only there if you want to play with that. That's not something you have to do. But the colors associated through traditional teachings with chakras is green for the heart chakra, but we also have pink for the heart chakra. So in my world, as far as working on other people goes, I've noticed that 9 times out of 10 there is a green color that comes into people's space in a multitude of areas, not just the heart chakra, that really speaks to me, translates to me as a massive growth period. It means that there's so much transformation and change going on there that the color shifts to a vibration of green to represent the data that's getting moved around and changed. And so as I begin to work on someone, there tends to be a rush of green that comes in at some point, and it enters the body and exits the body in various different places depending on what's going on with that person. But I have noticed that there is a bit of a quality difference in the color range between the green and the pink. I was afraid that as I bring this to your attention that they would almost be translated as equal, and not that there's a hierarchy, but they're not the same, I guess is what I'm trying to teach here. So really feeling into green, what does that represent to you? What does green feel like? What does it bring up within you when you paint your entire body green and just sit with that color vibration activation? What does it mean for you? Maybe it's something different than what my interpretation is. I just have walked away with a set of tools and kind of library type information that's allowed me to do what I do on a professional level of doing energy healing, and just recognizing that green tends to come in when I see this big transformation happening. So now I have this understanding in my body that says, okay, when I see green, I understand that there's a bit of information here that's speaking to the transformation that's changing this person right now. Now, when I see pink, what does that mean? Well, pink to me almost always has an association with your intuitive side, with your female vibration. So this doesn't mean that men can't have pink. It doesn't mean that it's associated with gender. It just means that the color itself has a very high frequency of feminine properties that allow for a very deep love sensation to take home in the body. So again, I'm not saying that pink is better than the green, but they're just two different aspects of healing. And maybe you have both coming in at the same time and it's green and pink kind of melding together. Amazing. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm just saying that feeling into the color pink, what does it feel like to you? What does it represent in your world? When you paint yourself with pink, what does that feel like? So there's a soothing sensation that I've noticed most people feel when I give them the color pink in a healing session. So it's pretty rare that I read someone's energy field and they already have the pink in some center. That's pretty rare, and I think that's really interesting to mention here. And maybe you don't discover that being true for you. Again, not trying to tell you what to believe. I'm very conscious of not imprinting my beliefs into you guys today. But I do want you to just have this piece of information as something to sort of reflect on, that 9 times out of 10, when I'm working on someone, I'm ushering in the pink energy into their space and then watching how their body responds to it. And what I've noticed is that there's a response of almost a gentle, calming sensation that at the same time feels like an enormous vibration of love, that it like activates the heart center and really opens up this space where now the chakra doesn't feel like it needs to be closed down and protecting itself. It goes, oh look, it's so safe to be here. So in a sense, it takes on this role of a mother type energy, the safety, the cocoon feeling, the support, the unconditional love, and just the softness of being. And I think pink to me really translates that energy in the body. So when it comes time to playing with your tools and playing with your heart chakra healing, I'd invite you to try both. Fill yourself up with green, fill yourself up with pink, see if you can get green and pink swirling here, and just play with it and really come to your own terms of what these colors are speaking to you and what it means. And then if you decide to work on other people, just notice, you know, oh wow, look, they are radiating a lot of pink already before I even really create any intentional change. Well, maybe that's just a nod to this person carrying that type of frequency all the time, which is a very unique choice as a soul. And so it develops into an awareness of how unique and individual all of our expressions are, and what we're able to hold as a vibration says a lot about who we are as a soul. So, you know, if you have a lot of trauma that you're really carrying around and it's very dense, it might be hard for the pink vibration to come in. It might feel actually repulsive. I have had a few people where I'm working with color on them and they don't know what colors. I'm not saying them out loud like, now I'm painting you with pink, but I'll flush pink through their system, and then suddenly they'll hit a lot of pain, and they'll kind of, you know, come back into more of the present time and be like, whoa, all of a sudden my ankles and my knees and my throat and my chest is hurting. And then I go, okay. And so then I address those things, but it's giving me a sliver of information that pink vibration triggered all of these things, because whatever was going on in those places that lit up the pain couldn't receive that divine pink healing energy. And the body's just going, oh, now we're gonna use our alarm system through pain receptors to say, hey, you can't accept that frequency through here, so let's address these things so you can allow that frequency to take home, because that's what you deserve. Everyone deserves to have unconditional love and higher vibrational information and healing, right? So the pain isn't there as a punishment of, you don't deserve this pink energy, but it's there to just say, hey, you know, your body's not letting you have the thing that you're asking for the change for. Now, I have had a few people where I've run pink energy through their body and I watch it sort of go out and around them. So it's almost like this translation to me that says they are allowing that type of softness and higher vibrational female energy on the outside of them, but they aren't really taking it in fully. And so that's just another example of where someone might be on their path or in their growth period, or maybe they're working on a lot of trauma, trying to develop their worthiness, trying to develop their willpower so they can even receive something like that. One last example I want to give here, and I know we're going a bit over time, I apologize, is an example about people who have a hard time touching other people. And just noting that when I pick up on that sensation of touch being a very heightened trigger, again, not putting my judgment on it, saying that this is wrong or this is right, but just noticing that quality in somebody, you're gonna find that information stored here in the heart chakra. So what does that say about that person? It could be a multitude of things. It could be that they're super sensitive, and when they hug someone, they feel everything that person is feeling, and it's very intense, and so they kind of resist it. It could also be that there's a trauma associated with being touched when they didn't want to be touched. So many different possibilities. But I do think that it's interesting that as we hug someone, it's really this heart-to-heart experience. You know, of course, there's different versions of hugs where people do funny things and they're like, it's not. It's like distant hugging. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the like full open arm, like embracing someone and really like heart to heart, right? So this is that memory activation of us being one. And it's like for a split second, we have that memory, that jolt through both of us where it's like, whoosh, unconditional love. And for some of us, that's something we're not letting ourselves have. So we shy away from hugging. Or maybe it's that we need that so badly that we want to have hugs all the time, and we become a bit obsessed with having the hugs with people. So just food for thought, just to kind of consider this whole heart chakra and what it governs and how it relates to our relationships with others. And because hugging is such a huge part of this like kind of tangible expression of love, I thought it would be fun for you to just consider people in your life that you may have experienced, or maybe it's you, and just kind of exploring more information, more data. What is that really about? And maybe it's many different things. Again, perspectives, looking at all of them, just having fun with it. So color-wise, we've got the green and the pink, right? So if we were to associate it with healing tangible objects, we're looking at anything in nature being green, which is again why I surrounded myself with these beautiful plants right now. But I'm also looking at a few stones that I brought with me today here to just kind of give you an example of different types of energies that you can work with when you're healing your heart. Now, there are so many beautiful stones, and again, the colors matching doesn't always matter, but I just brought a couple to show you. So I've got like Adventurine green. It's a very light green. I use this one a lot when I'm working with somebody who needs a lot of heart healing. So what'll happen now that I'm working remotely 99% of the time is holding on to this stone when I know somebody's really activated in their heart chakra, to just allow this stone to communicate through me and allow it to heal through them as like a proxy. And so you know, there's various types of stones you can find. Malachite's another really good one. I unfortunately don't have it in the room that I'm in right now, but I also have this stone, which is very fascinating because it is a dominating green, but on the other side it has this natural formation of yellow. So this one is very unique and special to me, that I use when I feel like there's a disconnect between my third chakra, which I associate with the yellow, right, and the heart. And so if it feels like there's something kind of stuck here in between the two, this is a really great stone because it blends the two together, you know. So just thinking about how to work with crystals in a new and different sort of way, right? Again, I've got another green one, and this one has some black specks in it. So this is one that I tend to use when I'm thinking about some shadowy aspects of the heart, some stuff that I really want to clear that maybe I'm not aware of, like I'm deep diving into that, you know, kind of soul retrieval aspect of trying to call back all my parts home, things that I've lost and fragmented that I'm not consciously aware of, and I'm just creating that shift and bringing it back in. And that's something we're going to visit in the meditation as well. So this is a stone that works really well for that, because I associate black as a very neutral color, and it sort of represents to me as the infinite space, the unlimited source of all things, and its absence of light within the blackness allows me to become aware of those things that I haven't shined light on yet. So this is a fun one for that. Now, when it comes to pink stones, there's so many beautiful ones. Of course, the rose quartz is the first one that comes to mind, and that's many people's favorite heart stone. I also have a couple others that I stick around with, and for some reason this one is evading the name is evading me right now. It starts with an R. It might be rhodolite. But it's this one. It's this really unique kind of pink. It's almost like purpley pink. It's kind of a mauve, actually. Maybe that's a better word. I hope you can see it. My camera's not really focusing. But anyways, I think it's rhodolite. Starts with an R. It's a unique one, and I don't see it very often, but I did come upon this one, and it has a very, very strong heart activation. Sometimes it's too strong. Sometimes when I am working with it, it really just creates that release with tears, and I can't really explain why or what I'm releasing. It just like activates water through my body, and I start crying and probably having to pee at the same time, you know, all the things, right? So it's a very deep releasing stone. So if you're looking for something that really works much deeper on the heart level, I highly recommend this guy. And I'll look into what the name of it is and put it here in the video in case I'm wrong and it's not rhodolite. And lastly, I have these miniature little pieces that I usually make a little mandala out of. But it's funny, I gave a few pieces to my mom for her birthday one year, and she was wearing it in her bra every day for a long time, and just really became deeply obsessed and connected with this stone, and just said that it really helped her come into her own with her intuitive development. She was taking classes at the time, and really credits this stone for supporting some of the sadness that was in her heart. So I haven't really had a lot of deep, profound connections with this stone myself. However, I have noticed that everyone I've gifted it to has really had an enormous response. Another child that was going through a lot of self-worth issues, had some abuse, I gave her a few pieces of this stone, and she, to this day, says it's her favorite. So there's just a really interesting quality about it, and it's a strawberry jasper, I believe, and it's got unique impressions on it. So it's a very light pink color, but it has these tiny little black specks and white specks that are kind of occupying space as well. So it almost has what I call the dinosaur egg energy. It feels very ancient, it feels very old, and it feels very special that it's pink. It just has a different type of pink that's almost like childlike wonder type energy, and I just like that they've referenced it under a name of strawberry, because to me that feels a bit youthful. I don't know why, but just this kind of engagement with that curiosity and the innocence of in us, right? So anyways, those are just some of the stones that I've been working with on the heart, and again, there's a bajillion of stones out there, so whatever resonates for your heart center, go for it. Maybe you have a heart-shaped stone that's different color, beautiful. Sometimes I use selenite or clear white stones. Not even just clear, sometimes the cloudier white ones work well for the heart as well. So, you know, calcite, different forms of that. So just trust yourself, trust what really feels like, oh, this one, when I hold on to it or I tap into it, it feels like I'm feeling this expansion in my heart. Well, clearly that's something that you're needing at this moment. I mean, right now, I've got this necklace on that I've worn almost every single day for almost 7 years, which is insane to me. I just was thinking about this the other day. And, you know, it really occupies my heart and my throat, right? It's sort of tapped into both chakras, and what the dominant stone on it is actually moldavite, which is a green stone. And if you don't know about moldavite, it's a very unique stone because it was a meteorite that hit the earth and it broke apart and shattered into a bajillion pieces. And there's only one place in the world, in Brazil, that you can actually harvest the moldavite because it's the place where it hit and, you know, expanded itself. But it has, I believe, over 81 different minerals. I could be wrong, but I think it's 81. And so it's a very unique blend of extraterrestrial information that landed here on Earth. And so for a lot of people, when they tap into this stone, it feels very dizzying and kind of intense. But I'll never forget that I was always attracted to it, and it's kind of hard to find, and it's usually pretty expensive. And when I finally found this woman that had made this necklace in San Diego, it felt like when I put it on, it was like I was home again. Like I had this very intense, almost like recall of who I am, or like some kind of soul retrieval activation that happened, and I just felt sane. It's like I felt more grounded than I did before, and yet I've handed my necklace off to other people and they felt like they get an instant migraine, or they feel like they can't sit still and their body's like brrr. So for everyone, they have their own unique relationship to stones, and it just was very weird for me to have this experience with moldavite that almost felt like it was the most grounding stone I'd ever experienced. So you have to trust the ones that speak to you, the ones that are meant to work with you. And I never in my life imagined that I'd be wearing this for the next 7 years. And I mean, and hopefully I get another 7 more out of it. But it's crazy to me that sometimes stones will just stick with you. You're meant to continue working with them for a long time. And then sometimes they just vanish, or it breaks and it shatters into a million pieces. And there's a surrender of, okay, now I have to just let it go and trust that that was not meant for me to continue working with. I've had experiences holding stones with points on them, like very sharp wand type crystals, and I'll be working on someone, and sometimes I'm using them to like aim, you know, so if it was this one, I'd be like aiming it at people like this, and then all of a sudden I've had it break in my hand, just like I was sending too much information through the crystal and the crystal couldn't contain it anymore, so it just shatters. I've had that happen, I think maybe about 5 times actually, and then maybe 2 or 3 times where I've experienced it alone, where it's just me and I'm sitting and meditating with it, and then as soon as I'm done with my meditation and I come back into my body and look down, I've got these little pieces everywhere. So stones are funny. They really have a life of their own, and sometimes they will decide when your contract is done, and they will either leave you or break or whatever. Or sometimes you just feel the need to gift them to people. Like, just like I was talking about the strawberry jasper, I had this weird feeling when I purchased these pieces that I was supposed to be giving them away to people. So I did. I instantly was like, this one's for you, and this one's for you, and this one's for you, and they became very meaningful for those people. So it's almost like I was just the liaison for them to have that interaction. So it's just a fun way to think about heart connected connecting with people in relationships to nature, in relationships to crystals, and how unique that is for each and every one of us. So anyways, I could talk so much more about crystals, but I just wanted to give you my little, you know, whatever about heart stuff, and just being playful with it, and having affection and love in whatever way that feels good to you. Maybe you just want to take a plant and meditate with the plant. Amazing. There's no need to work with crystals. And when we think about the sound of the heart, so there's two different ones I want to bring up here, because I can feel different traditional background explanations behind them, and I kind of went back and forth on which one I wanted to share, and then decided to just share both of them. So we talked about the other three, and this one is yam. So it's a lot like thinking Y-A-M, yam, like yum, but with an A, yam, yum, yum. So play with that when you're really trying to activate the heart center. Woo, I really felt that. That was intense, even just for me. So very powerful activation. And then it's not so different, but it is a little different. You'll see the similarity. So the other interpretation is ah, like in the word amen, which is probably where this derivative actually comes from, is the organic sound from the heart chakra. And then it, of course, got turned and manipulated into a different form of expression through, I guess, Christianity. I think maybe it was Egyptian before that, though, because I think there was a ruler that was a bit of a dictator during an Egyptian timeline prior to the expression of the Bible and an expression of the Christianity. So it does go back a bit prior to Christianity adopting amen. And so we're just kind of recognizing this ancient version of acceptance, that sound is then interpreted into types of mantras that allow our body to just find alignment into opening the chakra. So that's really the intention and the purpose. And then it's been sort of manipulated and in such a not so great way, where then it becomes more about worshiping something. And so this isn't anything to do in my teachings today about worshiping. I'm talking about the vocalization toning that allows for this heart center to open itself. And I just thought it was interesting to point out that it's ah, and it plays into how it's been formulated in more modern times to the very traditional prayer that we tend to end with amen. So it's just funny. It's like, oh, look at how that's such an ode to our heart center. You know, that's the higher aspect of looking at that, even though we have an understanding that it's also been sort of manipulated. So you can have your choice and maybe play with both. So you've got yam, and then you've got ah, so have fun. I hope you guys really got a lot out of this one. There is so much to say about the heart chakra. It was very difficult to narrow it down to what I wanted to really teach in this one. But I feel like it's important to really go through the experiences of what the heart is communicating, and not insist upon rushing the experience. You're not really trying to get to the other side. You're trying to have the journey be the part that is the most exciting. So enjoy, my friends, and I will see you in the meditation.